Elon Musk's Doge department is all about demoralization, which is one of the most powerful political tools that you can use. I'll give you some examples. So the goal of politics is what? It's not just power, but it's how to remain in power. And how to remain in power, it means to affect the way people vote and figure out the psychology around their voting patterns. And they have found studies where people who win in elections, when their candidates win, they're more excited to vote the next time because it feels good. When you vote for a Republican and a Republican wins, you have a sense of bragging that your side's better, that you are the winner, as opposed to when you lose, it's kind of like, why do we even try? And you saw that in 2020. Even whatever the narrative around Trump losing was and not being president, there's a large demoralization on the Republican side, which obviously was overcome by Trump himself, who gave the Republicans energy to push toward the 2024 election by simply not succumbing to the pressure. Now, Democrats are entirely demoralized. Unlike Republicans who had a leader in Trump, Democrats have nobody. You have no one really at the forefront strongly holding the flag of what Democrats represent. Kamala Harris is really not present or anywhere to be seen. She's certainly not being targeted by Republicans much. Biden's gone, the Clintons are gone. People like John Fetterman or the governor of Pennsylvania aren't public enough and really handing the flag of the Democratic Party. So Democrats right now are at a low point trying to restructure and figure out who they are. But when you have the quick speed of Doge consistently firing federal employees, enacting Republican agendas, regardless of what Democratic judges or Democratic people and institutions are trying, it's just more forcing down the throat of the Democratic Party that there is no hope for you. And demoralization affects outcomes, it affects how people feel, and if you can get them demoralized enough, they give up. When you see hints of this, one, you could take this as a personal life lesson. We all know what depression feels like, not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to try again, right? And you just apply that to a broad voter base. We know psychological operations where you have demoralization as experiments. For example, there was a popular experiment where I believe Israel forcibly broadcast pornography in certain religious areas of Palestine in order to demoralize the public, because there's nothing you can do, that you don't have any control over what you can even watch on TV. You have demoralization as far as Elon goes of firing federal employees who have no hope. Remember, Trump in 2016 and even in the George Bush era, these employees were incredibly hard to fire. The general consensus was you just wait out a presidential administration. But now they have nowhere to go, and that demoralization is continued and compounded by the fact that those people have friends, families, networks, who now cannot take them in because these people are frankly mostly unemployable. But the institutions that used to be able to have the funds through something like USAID to help fund all these transient government workers when they would be fired by an incoming administration don't exist either. So where do you go? What do you do? You have, for example, people bending the knee like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and now cleansing out their own DEI departments. Because remember, if you worked at Amazon and you worked in a DEI department and you got fired, well, you could always find another DEI department to go to. That doesn't exist anymore. So Elon controlling the news flow by consistently finding programs that are useless or funded to essentially launder the government's money and consistently control the narrative around attacking Democrats and constant pressure forces consistent demoralization. And this is just from the federal government side. We haven't had any more big court cases. Congress hasn't really pushed anything big yet. And when you are completely demoralized, you have no direction. You have nowhere to go. Once again, think about when you're depressed and lying in bed. You can't even think about the future. You can't even think about the present. In fact, you can only think about the bad situation that you're in. That's a huge political plus for Republicans. Democrats do this, Republicans do this, it just depends on the situation. But prolonged demoralization is what will really kill a movement. They even show this in unemployment statistics. Unemployment has always been a bad measurement of an economy because when people stop looking for jobs, they're no longer unemployed. They're off the roster. Unemployment normally is defined by people who are actively seeking work but can't find it. But if you just decide to drop out of that pool, you're no longer in the unemployment statistic, and that's been a big problem for America for a long time. But as that person is now unemployed, they're so demoralized, they just stop applying for work altogether. And obviously that has large implications. So just remember, the demoralization of the Democratic Party, the Democratic voter base, is very important because it means they can't plan currently, they can't plan for the future, they don't know how to respond under the attacks that are currently being pushed toward them, giving Republicans further chances to essentially kick them while they're down and keep them demoralized. And so if you think and you read articles about how Doge is doing this and maybe the money was already going to be canceled, or people trying to attack Elon and saying a lot of what Doge is doing is useless, even if that's true, which it's not, the fact that Doge is a giant demoralization vehicle, I mean, remember, you have someone like Big Balls coming in to ask you what you did this week and then get fired potentially by a guy named Big Balls. We think it's funny, but for the federal employee, it's completely demoralizing. It's completely destructive of a 10-year career that you've built thinking that you were doing something useful and important. To have a 22-year-old come in named Big Balls and fire you. That's, even though it is strategic and people like this Big Balls guy are very smart and gifted in the world of AI, Elon is correct in stating and making things funny. He even changed his name on Twitter, I remember briefly, because that is what part of the demoralization process is. It's making fun of you, it's laughing at you, it's making you feel worthless, like you are nothing, and it is one of the most powerful political tools that Republicans have never really used up until Trump. But especially now that Trump and Elon have teamed up, the two of them together are the ultimate demoralization vehicle, and that could spell the end for the Democratic Party for quite some time.